Welcome, listeners, watchers. This is the Pitch of Discontent. I am Owen.
And I am Paige.
Welcome to another weekly roundup. This is episode 165.
Whoa!
Yeah, racking them up.
Yeah, sick. Cool.
Paige?
Wait. Nah, I'm thinking of 55.
55?
Owen doesn't know all the memes, and that can be really hard.
I'm old.
It can be really tough on our marriage sometimes. Like, he didn't know at soup yesterday, which was, fuck. It's tough. It's tough out here for a hilarious bitch. You know what I mean?
We have been on YouTube now for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Coming up on the end of July. This will be the final episode for this month. And that rounds out our first month on YouTube doing video. Been fun. How are you feeling about it all?
I think it's been really great.
Mhm.
Warm reception.
Yes.
Great guests.
The guests have been sick. The response to the guests have been sick. I think it is a good move for us moving into video. Feels good. Feels comfortable.
My hair is aggressively graying still. And I don't know if those things are related or what, but like I am just becoming that old Anglo-Saxon woman with just like white ass. It's very Australian to just be old and have pure white hair. You know, like Barnaby Joyce style thing. Like, I don't know what that is, but
Bob Catter.
Bob Catter, yeah.
Yes.
Perfect example.
Let 1,000 grey hairs bloom.
Stop blooming. If they could stop
if anything,
blooming.
stop blooming.
And it's like to the point where it's so aggressive that I'll dye it and then it's like an inch of grey in a week. It's fucking wild and it's crazy. I should go see a hairdresser. But
before we get into the main show this week, we have 2 respective things to chat about at the top of the show. I've got notes here for you to talk about the Britney Spears Halsey business. What's going on there?
Well, so I don't know all the details.
Okay.
I can tell you that I've been watching like the slow drip release of Halsey's music on social media, and it was very clearly going to be an homage to Lucky, the single by Britney Spears.
Yes.
And these are like my 2 favorite pop artists. Definitely up there, top 5. Well, Britney is probably like my
Britney was
fave.
like the 2000s. Halsey
my
was
Y2K queen.
Was the 2010s. So
yeah, my Tumblr era and my preschool era.
And now Chapel Roan is the 2020s.
Yeah, I don't know. That's gay pop though. You know, the genre that JoJo created.
Right.
So it's like a whole different genre.
Yes.
The one that JoJo invented. Thank God. Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting. There was a tweet upon the release of the song. There was a tweet from Britney about how she's kind of offended by the caricature.
Yes.
And it's always hard to see 2 of your fucking all-time faves beefing
Rough.
it out. Deucing it out on the fucking Twitter sphere. Or Exosphere?
Exosphere? I don't know.
Who cares? I think for me, if I was going to do like an open reading of a Halsey song, I think that the whole point was the video is more about the caricature that was made of her.
Right.
She's not making fun of Britney. She's making fun of this version of themselves that gets created without their consent by media and by fans as well alike. Like parasocial relationships create a caricature of who those people really are. And we all know people are very complex. And there is no like black and white version of someone that can be perpetuated. But Britney got real upset and then she didn't. And she was like, someone else did that. Fake news.
And that was the part that I saw and brought to you. And I was like,
what's happening?
I was like, I don't want to be kind of that guy. I was like, but she has a history of being unwell and being unwell online.
Yeah, but
so
that's
like
you being that guy. I don't know. I think that other people do run socials.
Sure. I mean, she would have a team behind her, like no doubt about that.
Hard to know kind of what is coming from it. Also, will raise a conversation that we've had a few times is there's a big thing lately with creating fake beef between artists to help promote music.
True.
It's huge at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always been huge.
That kind of manufactured
yeah.
beef or whatever.
So it's kind of hard to know what's real and what's not there anymore. But I don't know. I like the track from Halsey. I also fucking love the song Lucky by Britney Spears.
Yeah.
So
It's not going to take anything away from that, is it?
not really. I think all of these things can coexist. I don't think that the film clip is making fun of Britney being mentally ill. I think it's making fun of might not be the right word, but I think it's kind of making fun of Halsey being mentally ill and in the public eye and what that must be like. It'd be fucking weird. Like, especially with, I'm not sure about Halsey, but I believe Britney has bipolar or even BPD, but like to be a different person on any given day and then have like the entire universe decide who you are every day would be so fucking bad for your health.
Enough to make anyone unwell.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
I think that's entirely true.
Yeah.
Well, for my subject, something a little bit more upbeat and wholesome.
Why did you give me the sad one?
This was just very relevant to your interests. So
please go ahead.
It is the week, or I guess period of time for the Olympics this year. They are in Paris.
Oh, I saw this. Gojira.
And Gojira famously performed at the opening ceremony, which is sick in of itself to have a heavy band from France be represented and play to an audience of, I think I saw like 1 billion people watching, which is fucking psycho.
It's kind of like they're bringing people who maybe previously weren't interested in the genre.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many people got converted into being Gojira fans, but
I really like the beheading bit.
Even if it's a few, it would be sick. But yeah, on its face, like having Gojira just play is cool enough. But also, they played on a castle, and the castle was where Marie Antoinette was imprisoned for a period of time.
Shout out Kirsten Dunst.
And then there's like a headless Marie Antoinette in one of the windows, surrounded by the members of Gojira playing. And they played like a bunch of Gojira songs. And like, I can't put any of these in the video because we will immediately get hit with copyright. So I'll just put like some still images or whatever. Google it. You can find it. You can watch it and listen. I'm not going to do that for you. But they also played a song with an opera singer. And the song was from the French Revolution. And it is literally about pulling out the guillotine and chopping the heads off their heads of state and leaders.
I have so many questions.
It's so sick.
Like how? As someone who's worked in production, like that's amazing that a whole crew of people were able to make that happen without someone coming in and being like, absolutely not.
I think, like those opening ceremonies, and like I'm not a big Olympics head here, definitely not a big sports head, so whatever. But I feel like the opening ceremonies are supposed to be like talking about the rich history of your country and specifically your city.
That is rich history.
And I'm thinking of like all the shit that we did for the Sydney Olympics when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
We had Nikki Webster up there, so like rich history. But I think with the French, like even though that subject matter is like particularly brutal, the French are like weirdly kind of like
proud of it.
They
should be.
To be like, yeah, we cut those fucking heads off.
Murder's bad. Eat the rich.
So, I mean, like, yes, it is provocative, but it's also true and part of their history.
And is it not poignant?
I mean, to do it at this current moment seems a little bit on the nose, on the neck, so to speak.
On the neck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's, just to raise a point here, Owen is banned on Twitter. And it is related to guillotine memes.
Correct.
So if that gives you an idea of like how we feel about wealth disparity in the world right now.
I'm certainly sympathetic to the subject matter of the track is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And also the real question that we have to ask is when they finish a gig, do they slow walk into the ocean like Godzilla does every time they leave?
Because their name's Gojira?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because like, That should be how they exit every show.
It's pretty boss.
And it's that guy, that meme, that's like Godzilla at the end of every film, and it's just him slow walking into a lake.
Great.
That's how I hope
Great bit.
and believe that that's how they leave every show. And that's how they left that
We
day.
can dream.
They just walked out into the ocean.
Okay, well, that's it for stuff at the top of the show. Should we get into the main show, run through some tracks?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Subscribe now to the Pitch of Discontent Patreon to receive access to extended cuts of our bonus episodes, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, monthly Patreon-only episodes, member-only votes, the TPD community chat, and much more. Go now to patreon.com/tpdpod and join for as little as $5 a month. That link again is patreon.com/tpdpod. Thanks for watching the show. Okay, so first up for this week, Oddworld Mavericks Ocean Grove.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They are back with another new metal flavored cut. This one is called My Disaster.
Yes.
And it comes off the group announcing the launch of their own label, which is Oddworld Records, fittingly, as well as assigning to Sharptone Records for distribution outside of Australia. So that's pretty dope. My Disaster follows on from their previous single Fly Away and acts as a throwback to their heavy roots while also expanding on the sonic palette that they've been kind of like defining with their Oddworld, persona.
Yeah.
Right? I've got a quote here from vocalist Dale Tanner. He says, quote, "My Disaster doubles down on Ocean Grove's definitive nu metal sound with a theme that we're no strangers to. This track delves further into the mental highs, lows, and chaos inherent to the human condition. It hits hard, but with an emotional awareness for our listeners to adopt. Visually, it highlights the external and internalized battle between both extremes of the emotional spectrum. It also publicly represents the re-emergence of the Oddworld collective."
Okay, cool.
So,
cool.
kind of
Well written.
Yeah, doubling
down
on kind of every aspect of the band, really.
Yeah.
But I like this one. It's catchy. It's heavy. It's good.
All right.
Should we just
give her a burr?
Let's just go straight in.
Let's just jump into it.
This is Ocean Grove, My Disaster.
Okay.
Is this all that I am? I've done it all. This is all in my head. Can't turn it off. I said never again, and I was wrong. Never after my disaster.
I needed a
Sorry. Please cook away.
Well, you identified maybe like a Linkin Park influence in there?
A little bit in the verse, I guess, where there's like a little bit of a kind of like a rap inspired flow. There's a little bit of like ambient stuff kind of going through, but then obviously hitting into like the big melodic refrain of the chorus. I just think like that contrast feels very Linkin Park-ish to me.
Yeah. And I would say that there is definitely room for that kind of sound right
100%,
now.
yeah.
I don't know about you, but I am missing the nu metal rap.
I feel like for a long time, it felt like Bring Me the Horizon were tapping into that kind of like Linkin Parkism.
Yeah, I don't know though. I think everything they do just like ends up sounding like them.
Yeah, that's true.
But this, I would say this does still sound like them.
Yes.
Like with that in there, but it fits in quite seamlessly.
Which is good because like, as we were saying before at the top, that it is a throwback to their kind of like heavier roots. And I would say that this song in particular feels a little bit chunkier and a little bit heavier than some of the stuff that they were doing on like Flip Phone Fantasy and some of the other records.
Definitely a fuller mix, but it's filled with a lot of like air. There's a hell of a lot more of this like mysticism through, like by letting that overhead hang in there, you get a lot more of like a cascading sound. It gives a fuller mix, right?
Okay.
And that just makes it sound really magical, I think, because they've gone for like a bit more of a high-end EQ as well.
Interesting.
It's very pretty.
It is very pretty. It's a very lush mix.
I would say I can hear Linkin Park, but I can also hear like a bit of that Deftones sort of in the mix. Because
Yes.
I don't really think it sonically sounds that way. But
No.
yeah, in that mix, it's
I
given.
mean, Dale's got a completely different vocal timbre to someone like
Exactly.
Chino. He's not doing a.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing is the instruments are though.
Apologies. You just have to do it.
The instruments are though.
Yes, I agree
So
with you
like
completely.
they've picked kind of where they want to introduce those sorts of elements, but stayed true to themselves, I think, through the main current of the song.
Yeah,
and that's really cool.
It sounds like Ocean Grove. The chorus is very Ocean Grove, super catchy, very sticky. The track kind of bangs and leans into the heaviness in those little bursts.
Yeah.
Which gives it just enough kind of bite and flavor without being like a heavy track. You know what I mean?
No.
Like still very like palatable.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really interesting for them. I like
and
this.
I think with the announcement of like their new, like their own label, as well as signing to Sharptone, like I can expect them to kind of be working on a new record, new release, something like that down the
better
line.
be.
I mean, I'm sure it's happening.
It better be.
Moving on, we have news from Screamo flag bearers Touché Amoré,
Oh, shit.
who were recently here last year or earlier this year for the New Bloom Festival. They've announced their first album in 4 years. This one is titled Spiral in a Straight Line.
That sounds like such a long time, but COVID years kind of just splice everything in half. Yeah.
Spiral in a Straight Line is the title of the new record. It's out on October 11th through their new label home, Rise Records.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So stoked for them.
Big news.
Also in news, the LP was recorded with legendary producer Ross Robinson,
Oh, shit.
who's worked with Korn,
Money
Slipknot,
moves.
Glassjaw, At the Drive-In, etc. It also has collaborations with Julian Baker of Boy Genius fame, as well as
Love
legendary
her.
Lou Barlow, who's been in Dinosaur Jr., Sebadoh, The Folk Explosion, among many others, I'm sure. But yeah, cool collabs, really cool kind of production with Ross. Like, that was not a name that I would have expected to see, like Touché Amoré and Ross Robinson together.
No, but it bodes for something really interesting.
Now that I've seen it, I'm like, okay, what can
this cook up?
what can that kind of like union come up with?
Yeah.
I've got a quote here from frontman Jeremy Boehm about the lead single from the record. He says, quote, "Nobodies," which is the name of the song, is the opening track on our upcoming album Spiral in a Straight Line. In just a handful of lyrics, it gives the broad strokes of the album, a song and record about forward movement while everything around you becomes destabilized.
True.
Yes.
Relatable content.
Incredibly relatable for this moment in time.
Yeah, far out.
Let's have a listen and we can see what we're picking up with the Ross Robinson production on the Touché
I
Amoré
kind of
sound.
can't even really conceptualize where this is going to go.
Yeah,
so
well, let's have a listen.
me with
We'll
it.
chat about it. This is Touché Amoré, Nobodies.
let's do it.
Neck in neck and side by side as I fixate on the road ahead. It just winds and winds and winds and winds. Is it enough to call it off? And lick our wounds and put us into past tense. Is it enough to call it off? And chuck it up to
Ooh.
Okay, immediate thoughts on that relative to what you know about Touché Amoré and their sound.
I think the main thing I noticed is that's probably the most isolated vocal track I've ever heard from them.
Yeah, I would say that's always been like a fairly distinct feature of the band is like Jeremy has such a unique vocal kind of timbre,
Yeah, but I ain't talking about his vocals.
no, I just meant
style.
that like his vocals are usually quite distinct. But you're right, like very forward in the mix, very isolated,
It's isolated and it's very
punchy.
it's punchy. Yeah. I think like you can go a couple of ways with that vocal style. Like you
Yes.
can give it more air, give it a little bit more of a room sound, and then you get like a very live punk aesthetic. I like this better though.
Yes.
I guess it depends on the band and what you're doing with the rest of the sound. I feel like instrumentally we've gone maybe more leaning on like an indie rock style for them.
Yeah, I think like if I think about all of Ross's like production work, particularly like when he was popular within like the late 90s, early 2000s with like the new metal stuff, And then venturing into your more eclectic bands like Glassjaw and At the Drive-In, I think he knows like when to kind of go maximalist with production to kind of like really accentuate like heaviness or like weirdness in a band. So, you know, like your Slipknots or your Korn or whatever. But then for bands like Glassjaw and At the Drive-In that come from like a DIY kind of like hardcore space, he knows how to retain the live like room sound.
He's walked like a very fine line for sure.
And a band like Touché Amoré, like you don't want them to be squeaky clean. You don't want them to sound overproduced because that rawness, that visceral kind of emotional, cathartic experience is so integral to who they are as a band, to Jeremy's lyrics, to the experience of the band. So like if you sand all of that away or if you like shine it up too much, I think you lose
the heart of it.
You lose the heart of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I do think this has been shined kind of to the precipice of that.
It sounds great.
Sounds beautiful.
But it still sounds raw and
real.
organic.
If you're listening to this as a new fan, you can still go to the show and
Totally.
like, oh, this is what I've been listening to.
Yeah, well, I keep thinking about like, you know, we saw them play at New Bloom.
New Bloom, yeah.
So it's like, I think about what that sounds like in a big room with 1,000 people and listening to this. And I don't feel like they're two entirely distinct things, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to harness that energy in a live setting, put it on record, shine it up, but don't sand it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think it was a really cool move. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like the evolution of the band.
Totally.
Doesn't feel like we're changing, doesn't feel like we've lost anything. It just feels like a natural progression here.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, I can't really talk too much about it without hearing the full record because I do think one of the reasons you would go to someone like Ross is not only just at the instrumental level, like how can he make everything sound, but production in terms of like songwriting.
Yeah.
And like what songs are we putting forward? What parts are we putting? What things are we getting rid of?
Yeah.
He obviously has such a crazy discography of working with so many different bands.
It'd be very overwhelming.
That it would be kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
But I also think for a band like Touché Amoré at this point in their career,
they know who they are.
They kind of would either need that
There's
or
a self-assuredness that they can bring forward to... It's more like you've got to work with an artist. You don't go in and say, well, this is what you're going to sound like now. Like that's not how any producer works.
Yeah, no, I think it's mutual for both of them, right? Like Ross would probably think that they're an interesting band to work with, a little bit outside of his wheelhouse.
And a bit of a challenge, I would say a challenge.
And conversely, they would think the same thing of like, well, he's kind of like a dream producer to work with.
Absolutely.
What is he going to do with us? What will he do to push us out of our comfort zone?
Also scary if like at the end of the day, you guys kind of feel completely at odds with each other's style.
I mean, that's the risk,
Such
right?
a risk,
Sometimes that shit doesn't work out.
But it's worked really well here. I think it's come out with... I don't feel like we've got an entirely different band. And that's like the big risk of when you get to that next level as a band is like everyone will start calling you a sellout.
Yeah, or it goes too far.
I mean, people probably still will because haters exist. You know what I mean?
The
like,
internet's
how
a thing.
dare you be working artists that actually make money? Fuck you. But I don't think that they've lost any of what makes them Touché Amoré.
I think if you're a Touché Amoré like diehard, you would listen to this and be like,
wow.
Be like, cool.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Yeah, cool.
Next up, I have a track from Adelaide Chaos Merchants Signals. They have dropped an absolute belter this week. It's called Poetry of Spite. And I would describe this as hitting like a sledgehammer of dissonance.
Nice.
It's got pounding drum mix, panic chords out the wazoo.
Out the wazoo?
Very caustic vocals.
Caustic vocals.
Stop it. Stop it.
Gorgeous.
Making fun of all of my descriptors. How dare you?
I'm enjoying them, and I am your biggest cheerleader.
I see the sprinkle in your eye.
There's no sprinkle, bitch.
She's sprinkling. The band will be supporting fellow Aussie heavy hitters Starve on their album release show at Stay Gold here in Melbourne next week. So check that out if you're in town. I'll put the details up on the screen. Future me, do it. This is chaotic metalcore for fans of bands like Vane, Sanction, Crowd Killing, that sort of shit.
Fans of crowd killing.
You know the ones.
I do.
Let's have a listen. This is Signals, Poetry of Spite.
Okay, let's do this.
Dying from within, corroding with the blade. As this grows nearer, the wielding will rise. Left with nothing.
Thoughts?
I love that. I like that slow breakdown you get in the middle.
Yes.
Any sort of noisy, distorted guitar ring out at the end of a track is always going to get my goat.
I also love like any kind of composition that relies on like a stop-start thing. And I love
Yeah.
breaking down the composition where everything drops away to just the chug and then bringing that back in for another measure, drop it out again, the chug. Like,
How do they get how my brain works?
I don't know, insight, foresight, some sight.
They're living rent free up there. You know what I mean? But it does. It just like, obviously for those who are inclined, it just brings like a joy to have a chug sounding guitar in the back at all, but to understand how much it's lending to the track in that way.
Yes.
To peel everything back and be like, all right, this will be hard as fuck. And
Yeah.
it is. Correct.
Yeah, I think they're doing something that's like a little bit missing from like an Australian heavy music scene. Like obviously lots of great Australian metalcore,
Totally.
but all of kind of like varying different sounds.
Yeah.
And this kind
There's
of
so much room for everyone and I love it.
this kind of like dissonant, chaotic metalcore stuff is very like particular, I would say, to like the US East Coast.
Yes.
And there's lots of bands like that have popularized it and revived it from like a 2000 sound. And these guys are doing something very similar and doing it with enough kind of like style and uniqueness that really kind of lends
Sets them
itself.
apart. Yeah.
And being from Adelaide, like Adelaide has historically always had kind of like a very like unique
They
kind
have
of
so
scene
many
there.
churches, you know?
Yeah. That's what did it. The churches.
Really good for all ages gigs is all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
And I think I remarked to you while we were listening that so much had already happened. Things had already changed and moved in so many different ways. And I looked at the time and we hadn't even hit halfway through
Yeah,
the track. So like to keep things moving, to keep things varied instrumentally,
It's talent.
it's a talent.
Yeah. It's like savant shit.
Yeah. And having like listened to all of their previous stuff, like I've been following the band for a little while. I think this might be my favorite track,
Yeah?
at least. And I think
Okay.
this is their like best shit.
Yeah,
So-
cool, tight. It's always good to see someone reach their
Yeah,
Charizard level.
indeed. Keeping things focused on Australia, I have a new entry for the podcast. Sydney Siders Regionals, billing themselves as, quote, your favorite sad band's favorite sad band.
Nice. They get the bit. They did the shtick.
Yeah, we love the fun sads here.
I mean, you understand they're referencing Chapel Roan there, right?
Yes.
Do you?
No.
You didn't.
No.
Straight over his cute little head. Look at him. He's pretty.
The quartet's debut album, Spoonbender, is coming out on August 23rd through Scary Stories and Team Glasses Records. The LP was recorded by Lachlan Mitchell at Parliament Studios.
Awesome. Also,
With mixing by friend of the show, Mark Perry. Shout out, Mark.
cutie.
And mastering by Dan Randall at Mammoth Sound. This one's really cool. I had a friend of the show, Adam from Team Glasses, shoot me a link to the
sneaky
record
link.
a while ago. Listened to it. It reminded me of that very like unique moment in like the very early 2010s. I'm thinking of like Triple Crown Records, No Sleep Records,
Sick.
Balance and Composure, like all of those kind of bands that were doing kind of a grunge revival, a little bit of an alt rock revival, but still steeped in like emo and like pop
Sookie.
punk kind of backgrounds and just putting it all into a blender. These guys are doing a similar thing, but it has like an Australian kind of
Yes.
feel to it.
That's cool.
The songs are great. This single in particular was one of my favorites on the record. So let's have a listen to that. This is Regionals Rotator.
Okay. All right. I'm keen. Oh, wait.
It's a good one, right?
Songs to disassociate to.
Yeah, it really does capture, I guess, kind of like that dreamy, kind of like swirling quality that you'd associate with something like shoegaze and that like wall of sound approach. But I think the vocal mix is particularly striking and the contrast of the different
Well, there was
vocals.
like two ways they could have gone with the two vocals. So they came in with it very much in the mix in that more cleaner style.
Yes.
And then I was like, this will be interesting what they do with the heavy vocal because they could go quite isolated, quite front forward with the heavy.
No, it was very much like...
But putting it in the wash, I think that was really cool.
It becomes more of like a textural thing rather than like a kind of like isolated instrumental thing, which is definitely the better approach, I feel, for this music.
I think it was the right move, yeah. And I was excited to find out too, which is always for me like a good sign of good music is like when you're like, what are they going to do with this? And yeah, like either way, I think I probably would have liked it, but I think it was the right move for this particular song because it is like a song that makes you just fucking like go glary-eyed and like just stare off and kind of get absorbed by it.
Yeah.
You know?
You can imagine like seeing this in like a, you know, divey little like club, bar, whatever. And
just the brain chemistry changes.
Like a couple of pints, maybe a doobie or two, and just being like, word.
Vibes. I am here for these vibes.
It's really good. The record is great. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Me too.
I
can't wait for me to hear it.
I think it's a fantastic debut, so stoked for that.
Great debut.
10
out of 10 debuting.
Very good. I have a new one here from New Jersey Metal Titans, Fit for an Autopsy. Are you familiar with these guys?
Yes, because of you.
They are back with their forthcoming album, The Nothing That Is, which is coming out on October 25th through Nuclear Blast and Human Warfare. This one follows their previous record, which was from 2022, Oh What the Future Holds. And then they also had a feature on the Aggression Sessions collaborative EP that we featured on the show with Thyada's Murder and Malevolence.
That was crazy.
I just think it's interesting that the previous record was called Oh What the Future Holds. Next record, The Nothing That Is. So like
sometimes that's what the future holds.
It's fairly bleak transition there. This is for fans of crushing existential deathcore, lyrics about the failure of humanity. I would also note that the album artwork is this really beautiful piece from returning collaborator Adam Burke of Nightjar Illustration. It's just this big black hole with like a swirling kind of like purple sky getting sucked into the middle.
Interesting.
It's really, really good. And I mean, Adam's...
Concerning though, because there's like a whole psychology about black holes in artwork and like what it on a psychological level says about the artist creating it. Like it can be like a big sign in people in like facilities that like they're taking a bad turn. And
I mean, I think
to toy with something like that artistically, kind of fascinating.
I mean,
for sure.
I wouldn't say that it's like a consistent theme in Adam's work, but it's definitely a motif that he's familiar with, and I've seen him do it for a bunch of different bands. So like,
I get it, babe.
Like,
I get it.
He's good at it.
Yeah, he knows the shtick.
I love his artwork. Anytime I see it in any band, I'm like, yes. Like, it draws me in regardless of genre or sound. I have a quote here from the band on the album's lead single. I'll start that
again. Take it from the top.
I'll start that again. I have a quote here on the album's lead single. It also happens to be the album opener. And the band shares, quote, "Hostage is an examination of the human trauma and grief that one carries through life. The inability to escape events of the past, combined with the feeling of an increasingly dark future that can weigh on a person like nothing else. The song is intended to capture that complex and overwhelming emotion and conveys the negative side of a sorrowed existence.
Bruh.
Relatable.
Too real. Too real. Life really do sometimes feel like just smacking your head against a wall.
It does. Speaking of smacking your head against a wall, let's listen to the track.
Fuck yeah.
This is Fit for an Autopsy, Hostage.
Okay. Ready for an autopsy.
Now, did you smack your head against a wall?
No, because I actually felt like there was a through line of this weird sense of optimism.
Interesting. Now, you did mention that, but I want you to expand on it. What do you mean?
Okay, is this a fucking essay? Are you going to give me a grade, please?
Yeah.
Will I get a gold star? I think it's probably just through the use of the scale that they've used, but despite... And I've noticed this being done by like a number of artists before, and it might be like some sort of music theory that I'm not aware of, but it feels like playing against type really can lend to a song sometimes. So like the subject matter of the song is quite pessimistic and sad and a bit like at the end of the tether sort of thing.
Sure.
So then to play against that instrumentally with like quite an optimistic, like, dare I say up, like it's not upbeat, it's upbeat for metal, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, up tempo.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it has to be in this genre. but they are playing at a rising scale. They're building and building towards like, you know, a big kind of explosion there at the end, and then a beautiful ring out where the dust kind of settles. I just think that this song, dark, sad, and it makes you feel shit for sure. And it does make you want to slam your head against the wall, and the fact that it has like this crazy bassy like undertone. But ultimately, like it feels tongue in cheek for that choice of instrument, because it's like you're doing the bit more than actually feeling like you're at the end of the road. You're like, oh, everything's the worst, rather than everything's actually the worst. Does that make sense?
No, I see what you mean. And there's definitely like a sense of like thematic contrast, I think, because like particularly in that chorus, like where it leans into like the heavy kind of like beat down passage with the like chugging guitar, there is that vocal like chant over the top, and that kind of contrasts with like the instrumental like rhythmic heaviness within like a soaring kind of like melodic refrain. And even though like the lyric is probably sad and depressing, the overall vibe is meant to be kind of like melancholic and egalic. It's not like a bright poppy melody. It still does provide enough of a counterpoint where
I would
it's not
call it
just,
more of a silver lining than like a rainbow at the
like
end.
a bittersweet kind of notion.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I vibe with that.
Yeah, it's got a sugar coating.
Yes.
Yeah, tasty, delicious track.
With a black hole in the middle.
I don't know if I want to eat that.
I mean, it'll eat you. That's what a black hole does.
Finally.
Welcome the sweet release of death. Let's move on to our next track. This one comes from legendary Japanese post-rock screamo masters Envy.
Yeah, hell yeah.
They are coming back with their 8th studio album. This one is called Unoa, and that is spelled Eunoia. It's coming out on October 11th through Temporary Residence Limited. Now, I had a suspicion that this was some kind of like ancient Greek concept, just by the way it was spelt.
Oh, okay. Why?
Just because it looked similar to stuff that I'd seen in university and literature and philosophy and stuff. So
Egghead shit.
Did a quick Google. Turns out it is drawn from ancient Greek rhetoric. And the term essentially means well mind and beautiful thinking.
Oh, can't
So
relate.
it's about having your mind in harmony with your own thoughts and like achieving a sense of like kind of like, I guess we would call it like mindfulness. It's like what the ancient Greeks would call like mindfulness.
Yeah, right. A higher self.
Yeah, I guess. Like they were really kind of obsessed with like harmony. So they're thinking of like the well mind is like a mind that's well
Inside
balanced.
me, there's
and-
two wolves fighting each other. And then there's
Yeah,
another
sure.
wolf watching them fight because he's a voyeur wolf.
Yeah. Cool.
You're welcome.
So the album is billed as, quote, an increasingly eclectic and seemingly inexhaustible well of ideas, packed with an abyssal emotional depth and the most efficiently impactful album of their unbelievably lengthy 30-year career.
Holy crap.
So they've been at it for a while.
They have.
And this is meant to be a beautiful example of that long and prestigious career. I have a quote here from founding member and songwriter Nubikata Kawai, who explains, quote, the concept of creating the album was to honestly face our own powerlessness, searching for a little hope and recording the emotions gained from daily life in a diary-like manner. Even without explaining the songs, Tetsu's lyrics were wonderful and added depth to the piece. It has been 6 years since the member lineup changed, and the good relationship of trust has been strongly reflected in the work.
Aw, that's nice.
Yeah. So again, like with member changes being added into the mix and having to adjust to
I
like,
imagine it'd be like going through a breakup. You'd be like,
I mean, kind of.
sometimes it can be amicable, sometimes it could be messy.
And if you've been a unit for 30 years, that's
Be hard.
that's inevitably going to happen at some point. So I guess like that concept of balance and well mind and beautiful thinking is kind of like a reflection of like a collaborative effort to
Yeah.
do that among, like multiple individuals.
I mean, the use of that, like, was it like unending well of ideas? Like,
Inexhaustible well of ideas.
inexhaustible. Thank you. We needed to get it correct.
That's okay. I wanted to get it correct. It was a quote, so I don't want to fuck it up.
I think that's something that a group of people can bring out of each other.
Yes.
When there's no one stifling the creativity,
And it
there's a great
flows.
flow and everything feels like quite give and take. Like it probably could feel like an unending. Well, I said it wrong again. Sorry.
Inexhaustible.
Inexhaustible well of ideas. And that's how you get the shit that makes me go, how do they come up with this shit? So I'm always stoked to hear stuff like that.
Yeah. Let's have a listen to the lead single from the record. This is Envy, Behind the Raindrops.
Oh, pretty. Okay, let's do it.
また行くよ
Oh, man.
I don't know what it means, but I love it.
They're just such a gorgeous band.
It's so pretty. Kind of just lose yourself in it a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, they're just like so dreamy and
They're so dreamy and interesting, and they just like get me. You know what I mean?
I mean, when I was starting university, like a little over a decade ago,
Yeah, all right,
I
Mr.
would-
Educated.
well, I would listen to a lot of like post rock,
Great music to
and
study
like
too,
instrumental stuff,
for sure.
and like normally I want things without vocals because following the vocals is distracting when you're trying to study.
Super distracting. Yeah.
Having vocals in a different language, it can just become another instrument.
It becomes another instrument. Yeah.
And even when they get into like those really beautiful ambient, like spoken word passages, it just feels like someone's like reading poetry to
it
you.
does. Yeah.
And yeah, they're just an incredible, incredible band.
Yeah, they're definitely one of those bands that you can just chuck on and relax to. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
very
agree.
soothing.
Yeah. But also you could totally drop some acid to this shit and
You
lose your
absolutely could.
mind.
Yeah, totally.
Nangs would be great. You'd be so relaxed. Sorry, drugs are bad actually. and also I don't think I'm cool because I do them. And I don't do them anymore because I'm an adult now.
I feel listening to this that I now have a sense of I have a well mind. I have
It's so funny,
beautiful
yeah.
thinking.
That is what this song does kind of
It's kind of what it
ignite
evokes,
in you.
right?
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
In a synchronistic kind of way. Like they called the record what the record does.
It's almost like they did that by design.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be good music. Like, you know, people always say like you got to quieten your mind to meditate and stuff. For someone with ADHD, that's not a thing. It's not, that you don't. And if you actually go to people to help you, they'll tell you, yeah, some people can't. And it's better to like go with the flow and have guides. So like you'll be told to like listen to meditative music or guided tracks, that sort of shit. This is great. You could totally go and center your mind listening to music like this.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in like quieter passages and stuff like that. Like it would definitely bring a sense of stillness and calm.
Yeah.
I've certainly felt that listening to it.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely
it's very
relaxed
easy to
me.
kind of just drift away.
Could have had a mad nap right after this, for
Well,
sure.
don't do that. We still have the show to do. Okay, well, moving on to keep Paige awake. It is a sad day for Aussie elder emos everywhere.
Why?
Behind Crimson Eyes have announced that they're going into retirement. Yeah. And that news arrives as the
Cool.
band are preparing to hit the stage, supporting Story of the Year and Senses Fail on their upcoming tour. But on this retirement, I have a quote here from frontman Josh Stewart, who says, "We are saddened, but also excited to share this final chapter with everyone. It's been an incredible journey. We have toured with some of the biggest bands in the world, including Iron Maiden, Avenged Sevenfold, Bullet for My Valentine, Disturbed, and so many more. This wouldn't have been possible without the unwavering support of our fans. So we thank you all and look forward to celebrating the past 20 years with all of you soon."
That'll be 6 shows.
Yeah, so the band aren't going out without a bang. They have dropped a new kind of more
You
metalcore
just used a
adjacent.
double negative.
Not going out without a bang.
Without a bang.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm with you.
So they've dropped a new track. It's kind of like a heavy metalcore adjacent banger. It is called Dead Drop Dead, and it paints, quote, "a vivid picture of the darkness that can envelop us, the sense of bleeding out emotionally, and the spinning chaos that can result." I'm doing that thing again where all the songs are kind of talking about a similar
Yeah, I
thing.
noticed that 2 songs ago. I was like, he's doing it again.
Damn it. The track is taken from the band's forthcoming EP, As Yet Untitled, which will drop in early 2025. And then following that, the band will go on their final farewell tour. So they're announcing their retirement, but it's like a year out at this point. So
They're giving us time to
giving us
grieve,
plenty of time to grieve.
for sure.
Let's have a listen to the track. It's a heavy one. This is Behind Crimson Eyes, Dead Drop Dead.
Oh my God. Okay, let's do this. I'm sad.
You stoked about having that on camera?
I only wear shirts that are passive aggressive to my dog. This is directed at him and no one else. Don't make it weird.
What'd you think of that?
Yeah, that was sick.
It definitely caught me off guard when I first heard it, because I think like Behind Crimson Eyes will always be that like 2005 era band for me. And I know that like when we moved to Melbourne, we went and saw them play at Stay Gold, and like that was a cool
That
experience.
was a great show.
Because they put on a great show, they sound great, but they were definitely like pulling from a range of material that was like so nostalgically mid 2000s.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was making me feel like I was downloading their stuff off LimeWire at like 15 again.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
So like to hear them now put out new music in 2024 and to have it be this kind of like heavy is kind of just like a weird kind of dissonant feeling. But like the track rules, it's heavy.
Yeah.
It just, my brain is trying to hold like the 2 different versions of Behind Crimson Eyes in my head.
This is the sensible step for them
Yes.
sonically. I don't understand how they would break up though after making something this good.
Well, they're doing
It's hurtful. It's like Plovers all over again. You're fucking me up. Don't put out sick, incredible music and then be like, but that's it, bitch. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You're hurting my heart.
Well, like I said, they're announcing this like a year in advance. They're giving you time to grieve and mourn.
It's not enough. It's not enough. Rude.
Yeah, I feel like if you've been a ride or die for Behind Crimson Eyes this whole time, like you'll love this song. It doesn't sound too dissimilar from like some of the heavier tracks they've done in the past, but you know, they can also still bang out the real emo shit as well. So you get both sides.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good when they rock and roll.
Yeah, I agree. Final track for Mosh Pithy this week comes from Washington, D.C. emo pop outfit Origami Angel. You familiar with these guys?
I'm familiar with Washington, D.C.
Cool. Well, that's where they're from.
Yeah.
So they...
Spider-Man climbed that thing one time. Big guy.
The Washington Monument?
Yeah, that.
Yep.
Civil War.
So Origami Angel have just announced their brand new album, Feeling Not Found. It's coming out on September 27th via Counterintuitive Records. Now, this is a Will Yip produced record. Billiam's back.
He's back at it again.
And this album follows the group's 2023 mixtape, The Brightest Days. And it is billed as, quote, an emotional and spiritual 404 era, a sensation of cellular level malfunction and data corruption.
So that mean like 404 error, like this page cannot be found?
Yes.
Cool.
Feeling not found. Quote, of being lost in an oblivion of digital information and the desperate struggle to reconnect to how it feels to be human and whole.
I feel like this is the converging of like my two weird niche interests. It's like scripting and music.
Yes. The duo have released a double single for the album announcement. So there's two tracks, Dirty Mirror Selfie and then Where the Blue Light Blooms. And I'm going to play Dirty Mirror Selfie because it's my favorite of the two.
Okay.
Let's have a listen to that. This is Origami Angel, Dirty Mirror Selfie.
Okay, let's check it out. Super fun. Yeah, for sure. I also, to go on to my unhinged tangents.
Please do.
Remember that episode of True Blood where Old Love's mom's like a full-blown alcoholic and so she goes to do like this voodoo, like get the demon out and then they like drown a possum? I think it was a possum.
Yes, it was.
R.I.P. little buddy. That's how this song feels lyrically to me, is that there was a little demon inside of them.
Like an exorcism.
And they needed an exorcism to take themselves back.
Okay.
Just to give you a visual, that's what this is about.
Right. Okay. Weird how that's where your brain went, but I'm also not surprised. So
no, we've been doing this long enough now that you should expect this shit.
Sonically, I think it's very fun. That lead riff is like super catchy. The guitar tone is perfect. It strikes me that like this record is exactly what it would sound like if 4 Years Strong recorded with Will Yip.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it has,
I could hear that.
It has like the kind of heavy kind of like riffage meets like super catchy pop punk chorus type stuff that 4 Years Strong were doing like 2 albums into their career.
This is the best emo track ever.
But yeah, it's like pop punky, it's emo, it's self-deprecating, it's fun, like
tongue in cheek.
It
like
just
this.
works. Yeah, like
I
that.
hope I looked so pretty.
Isn't that great? I'm pumped to hear the record. I saw like how I came across the band. Like I've heard the name, but I've never really like listened that extensively. But I saw Will talking about working on the record online and talking about how fun it was.
And at the end of the day, we are Will Yip stans.
We are. And
First and
if
foremost.
he's shouting out a band that he worked with and he's saying that the record is good, I'm inclined to believe him. So I immediately went to go check it out. And
We love Daddy Will.
and
So.
I heard this song first, and
you
I
were
was
like,
like, "This slaps. Let's go."
Okay. Also, totally understand taking a selfie in a filthy mirror.
Yeah, totally.
like,
We've all
how-
done that.
We used to do that a lot, and you'd never notice. And then years later, there's all these photos you're looking through and you're cleaning up all your shit, and you're like, ew.
Well, that wraps up Mosh Pithy for this week. Should we swing on over to heavy
Yeah,
metal? I have an
let's,
incredible feature album for you this week, so
the
let's
big
jump into that.
leagues.
Let's go.
Let's into the big leagues. And we're back.
And we're
We
back.
went far away.
Yes. So really, really stoked on the feature album this week. It's an absolute banger. I've been listening to it for the last few weeks. Stoked for you to hear tracks off it and to talk about it. So we featured the band in question, State Faults, on the pod back in May.
Did.
So they put out a track called Palo Santo off the new record. We talked about it. It was a lot of fun.
It was
very
great.
like screamo track, but with a beautiful like melodic refrain and
Yeah, it was
chorus
pretty. Yeah.
woven into it. Well, the new album, Children of the Moon, is now out in full through Death Wish. This is the follow-up to their third full length, which was 2019's Clairvoyant, one of their more heavier records. But the new album was produced by Chris Teddy, who's worked with The World is a Beautiful Place and a bunch of other bands. And I think what he brings to the band in terms of production, songwriting, has resulted in probably the most expansive record of their career,
Yeah.
at least to my ear. What I think is worth noting is that this almost didn't happen. So the band basically had a whole bunch of touring plans lined up for Clairvoyant following 2019 into 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. A lot of that resulted in, loss of money financially, stress on the band members. They had a switch up with record labels and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because labels just think it's like, it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It's always the band's fault somehow.
Yeah, so like all of this burden weighed on the band and nearly broke them. And there's a couple of interviews out there where they talk about this, but basically they managed to like pull all their shit together, go, no, we've got something good here. Let's do another record. And I'm pretty sure this record was recorded in 2022 and they've been sitting on it until now,
Nesting.
to where they were in a position to like put it out and
It was their little baby chick.
yeah, and give it a proper push. So I think like acknowledging that like they had to cross this existential gulf and kind of
And
find
have so much like self-belief.
yes, and
Yeah.
find a sense of like grand purpose. That idea permeates through this whole record,
Yeah.
both at a literal level for them, but also at like a thematic and conceptual level. So just like keep that in mind.
Okay.
But in terms of the band's sound, like the writer Dan Aussie once described them as, quote, what a panic attack sounds like.
Okay.
And similarly, Adam Yo from No Echo described their lyrics as a meditation on trauma and healing. I think both of those descriptions are very apt. And
Yeah.
you'll see with the tracks that I've selected that that's very much what's going on here. I will say that for me, Children of the Moon is probably their grandest, most sonically daring record. There's moments on here that I find euphoric and joyful. There's moments on here that I find absolutely gut-wrenching.
Wow, okay. So it makes you feel shit.
It's making me feel a lot of shit.
Yeah, cool.
I've got a quote here from vocalist and guitarist Johnny Andrew about the single from the record Divination, which is the first track I'm going to play for you.
Cool.
And he says, quote, "The scariest part about big changes in your life is the unknown. It's easy to view uncertainty as negative space. We scrutinize this nebulous, mysterious future, comparing it to the past, letting old patterns and behaviors put blinders on to any potential for positive change. When we let go of the past and unburden ourselves with preconceived and usually unfounded fears, that scary, looming void magically blooms with endless possibilities for happiness."
Powerful.
Yeah. So it kind of links into a bunch of stuff that we've been talking about on this episode.
Yeah.
Again,
Sure.
I didn't plan that, but
You're
here we
always
are.
doing it.
Let's listen to the track first, and then we can kind of talk about it because there's a bit of lyrical explanation I want to do
Okay.
afterwards. But this is State Faults Divination.
All right, let's check it out.
Okay, thoughts?
I didn't want it to end.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I was all about the melodic guitar riff underneath there and kind
That
of like,
kind of like noodly riff that's kind of like
Yeah.
underneath everything.
yeah,
It's great.
it's really cool. It kind of pulls you through the whole track. You're just like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, so the way the record is structured, there's, I think, like 12 or 13 songs.
Yeah.
And it has like a big kind of like 10-minute track directly in the middle.
Okay.
And then the album closer is like a 9-minute track.
Yeah, and
So-
honestly fair because listening to that, you wanted it to just keep going.
So they have these like big, expanded, grandiose moments that kind of separate the two sides of the record, right?
Yeah.
And then in between that, there's a bunch of different songs that are slightly shorter, slightly longer. Divination is kind of like, I think maybe the 4th or 5th song, like kind of in the way of
Sure.
that side A. But there's so many different themes on the record, but they're all kind of tied into this idea of like struggling.
Mysticism?
Well, kind of like Children of the Moon,
Yeah,
the
mysticism.
album cover.
Yeah.
There's like titles to like, you know, like the Blood Moon and stuff. But this idea of like what comes after.
For sure. Well,
So-
after the blood moon, everything resets and you have to fight all of the fucking enemies again. It's really annoying.
Yeah, there's like songs on here called like Heat Death. So like pondering the end of the universe. There's songs on here like Transfiguration, which is about like this transformation of the body and the self. There's Divination, there's Blood Moon. So
Not
like
to like talk about turfs, but lots of Harry Potter vibes, eh? All of this shit existed pre-Harry Potter, but you know what I mean? Like, all I can see when you say divination is Professor Trelawney just being like, oh, it's the Grim! You know? Dumb bitch.
So the lyrical stuff that I wanted to talk about, that first kind of lyrical couplet, I guess, that starts off the song. So the lyrical quote here is, "The emptiness is a womb, not a grave. You only spill what you contain. The fire we hold inside ourselves casts a shadow on the past. Some stay forever looking backwards, and the void starts looking back." Which I
Ugh.
think like leans into this quote that we read from Johnny before, where he was like that you have to kind of you
Push
have to
through.
acknowledge that there's like this history behind you, but not let it define you. And you have to be able to like take it, let go of it, and like not ignore it, but like acknowledge it, let it go to be able to move forward.
Well, trauma can like weigh you down
Yeah.
for sure. I think that's so interesting to say like the black hole is a womb and not a tomb. That
Not
was
a-
it? Tomb?
Not it's a womb, not a grave.
Not a grave, yeah. Because like I do think that like we look like it's talking about depression. I mean, this is my interpretation, but it's
No.
talking about depression, and often those darker moments feel like the full stop instead of the semicolon. But he's talking like instead of looking into the face of that darker moment and seeing the end, he's seeing rebirth, right?
Yes, that's right.
Cool.
It's not an ending, it's a opening to new possibilities and new potential.
Finding
That's the-
perhaps like a more evolved version of yourself.
Yeah, it's like an optimistic way to view. And I just think like if you think about like the Nietzsche quote that it's kind of referring, which is like, you know, he who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. If you gaze for long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you, which is like to kind of like talk
Fuck yeah, Nietzsche.
talk about like that depressive navel gazing of like
Yeah.
staring into the abyss. You'll
get lost in it.
You'll get lost in it. The abyss will stare back into you and fill
Yeah.
you with that sense of futility and emptiness.
Poignant, and somehow like one of the most helpful things anyone's ever said to me about mental health.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, because like, you know what's not helpful? Why don't you go for a jog? You know, like why don't you just like do more exercise or take better care of yourself? Not helpful. But telling me that if I stare too long in the abyss, it'll look back, somehow helpful.
So I guess like when I was kind of doing like some analysis and preparation for this, I was thinking of like the futility of struggle when that monster that you're fighting with is your own mind.
It's the wolf and the other wolf.
Yes. When that void, the emptiness, is your own sense of self and how kind of difficult that can be. I bring this up because the next song is the album closer, Bodega Head. And this is gorgeous and one of the most devastating songs I've heard in a very long time. It kind of brought me to tears listening to it. It's powerful stuff. It is named after a promontory called Bodega Head in Northern California in Sonoma County, which is a suicide spot.
Yeah.
Where people
often take their
throw themselves off a cliff.
Wow.
And as you will guess, that is somewhat of the lyrical content of what we're about to listen to. But I just think that like it kind of pairs, I don't want to say pairs well, but it is a counterpoint to this sense of like emptiness and optimism.
It's literally jumping into the abyss
that we were talking about before. This is a long one, but let's have a listen. We'll chat about it on the other side. This is State Faults, Bodega Head.
Okay, let's check him out. I have my emotional support dog here.
Yeah.
This is my emotional support, Reese. Because that was heavy but beautiful and moving. It's the kind of song that I will listen to on repeat for like years.
Yeah. I sent it to a friend of ours, and the way I described it was like it's on some King Park shit.
Totally. Yeah. And it talks about similar themes like that, grappling with like, will I still get into heaven if I yeet myself?
Yeah, just like so much of the lyrics, like instrumentally, the track is beautiful, and it goes through these different like swelling kind of movements, and it's just gorgeous.
And it's got this live mix to it, like where you feel like you're in the room with the band somehow.
Yeah, but Johnny's like just devastating kind of like melodic refrain at the start. And like the lyrics, like, do I get to start again? Or have I closed the gates to heaven? Now I'm on the edge, hanging by a thread at Bodega Head. And then when it switches and he leans into the scream, it's like I'm drowning in my own skin, clawing for another breath, another chance. Why can't I just let go of all my old sorrow? Let me go, bound inside this fragile flesh, inside my chest. And this is the part that really kind of like gets me because it's like such a subtle shift of like the previous line being let me go. And he says, I want to let me go.
Yeah.
Not let me go. I want to let me go.
Yeah.
Which is like this idea of like depersonalization and this sense of emptiness, you know, that links back to divination.
Yeah.
But like the emptiness is a womb. It's not a grave.
Yeah. It's an opportunity for rebirth.
But not everyone gets that.
No.
And I think a lot of people, particularly the kinds of people that find themselves hanging by a thread at Bodega Head, have reached a point where that emptiness
has kind of consumed them.
It's swallowed who they are.
Yeah.
And that feeling of just like not wanting to be yourself, you know, two separate words, yourself
Yeah.
anymore, and just let it go.
Yeah. But then, I mean, for me, it was like the grappling of like what that actually means. Like, there's like a thing in psychology about fearing death, because ultimately, like, it is like what we all fear at the core of it.
It's the death drive.
Yeah. And there's different types of like the way that we perceive ourselves, and it changes. It depends on the day, the mood, different influences. But you can fear death in different ways.
Sure.
So you can fear death in...
You okay, buddy?
Our little dog's afraid also. Come here. Come here, buddy.
We're almost done, buddy. Up you come.
So you can fear death in the way of like afterlife. So you can fear... What? We're having a really deep conversation, my dude.
Yeah.
What's going on?
We just need like another 5 minutes and then you go. He wants to go for a walk. That's what it is.
Probably needs to pee.
It's 4:30.
Okay, so hopefully I don't butcher this, but you can be afraid of dying because ultimately you mean nothing, meant nothing, leave nothing. So it's a fear of nothingness, of ultimately like there isn't actually pearly gates, there's nothing. So there's two different ways to fear that nothing. So is it, are you afraid that you are nothing, that you cease to exist? Or are you afraid that you're lost in nothingness? So you do still exist. You have a state of consciousness, but you're suspended in a purgatory of nothingness. And generally, like, those are the two endings of that kind of death drive fears. Like, how do you perceive that fear? And then from there, you can break down that fear and what it's stopping for you. Like, what is it getting in the way of? Like, what are you not achieving because of that fear, you know? And I just think that this song for me has explored that so vividly, and I can see him on the cliff, on the edge, and I can see him grapple with both fears, like diving into the abyss off of the cliff, or not, like I've closed the pearly gates, like there is nothing more. I am nothing more. And it's just so interesting to hear those two different analyses in one song. Is really powerful.
It's super powerful. And like throughout the album, there are these brief kind of like interspersed samples that we were talking about just before we like switched it back over. But I tried to find exactly what they're from, and I found a reference to them in a review for the record. But as far as I can tell, they're taken from kind of like some instructional videos or like recordings of like a psychiatrist speaking to a woman about her own like mental health and mental illness, right? And there's like a part in there where she talks about like not being sure what's real. And like a question,
derealization,
a question of, you know, their reality and their place in it. And towards the very end, like the song and the instrumental really kind of like pulls back, and you can hear the sample. And she says like, "I dream in Technicolor."
Yeah.
And then the psychiatrist is like, "Well, that's interesting. Tell me about it." And she's like, "I can't tell you. I can't verbalize it. I can't articulate what that is like. But I wish you could see it."
Yeah.
And it kind of links back to like the last few lines of Bodega Head, where it's like, I felt a faded dream. You know, like I grasped at this vivid sense of Technicolor.
Yeah, but I couldn't put it in words for you.
And then the final line is like, and I let it swallow me.
Yeah.
So like,
stared into the abyss, and it stared back.
Yeah. Anyway.
Powerful stuff.
I tossed up whether to talk about this song because it is a 9-minute song. So I was like, do I want to play a 9-minute song for Paige on the show? But ultimately, like, it's just such a beautiful song. One of the most genuinely affecting things I've heard this year. Very stunning. And I think a very powerful closer to a really, really incredible record. And I think if like these two songs have done anything for you as a listener or watcher to this episode, like I implore you to go listen to the full record and turn off the lights, whatever setting you choose, listen to it from front to back, and you
I
will
would
feel some
say-
shit.
Just to kind of cap it off, the perfect analogy for a rebirth through the abyss, you'd have to be in some type of severe pain to write a song like this. But without that pain, the world wouldn't have a song like this.
Well, this links back to what we talked about at the start. Like, this very nearly didn't come into being, right?
Because of how dark the subject matter is.
Yeah, like the band obviously went through a lot of shit.
Oh,
and,
yeah, that too.
And
yeah.
like they had to push through a lot as individuals and as a collective to keep the band going, to create this record and to push through all of this bullshit.
Yeah.
And the world is a better place for it because,
This exists.
I mean, the record is incredible, but
Yeah.
that final song, like, even if that was the only thing they released, like, my God,
Worth it.
incredible.
It's the rebirth.
So
They got through to the other side, and thank God, because now we have this song all about what could have been.
yeah. But I mean, I've been sitting on this record for like the last few weeks, and I'm
Mm.
just excited for people to hear it and listen to it and
Me
talk
too.
about it because it's genuinely
Huge.
incredible.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Sick.
that kind of wraps up the show.
That's us.
Sorry to end on a bummer note.
We always do. Let's face it. This is alternative music.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for chilling with us.
Thanks for tuning into the show for another week. We'll have more guest feature episodes for you, and will we be back next week?
I've got to go away for some work shit,
You
so
do.
you might have some special co-hosts in the intro.
I'll see what I can do. I might pull some strings and see if we could get like a guest co-host, or failing that, it'll just be me. You're welcome. We'll figure it out. Maybe Reese will sit in for you.
He's a pretty great host. But yeah, that's it for now.
All right, let's wrap it up there.
Love you. Goodbye.
See ya. Bye.